All right, welcome to 4-1 Day 3. We're going to look at our notes. It's going to start with undercoverage, non-response, and response bias, so make sure that you go ahead and have that in front of you. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Let's start with our vocab. Let's first look at undercoverage. This is when some groups are left out of the process of choosing the sample. So an example here would be only calling people that have landlines. You would leave out all of the people that have cell phones. So typically the only kind of people that have landlines are the older population. So you've left out maybe a considerable number of younger people that could have been in the sample. Non-response is an individual chosen for the sample can't be contacted or refuses to participate. So this would be like maybe only calling individuals during the day. So you would leave out people that are at work. So the problem here would be is that you would they would be a part of the coverage, however you left them out of the sample. So they couldn't be contacted. It's also could be considered under coverage. So if you can't tell the difference between the two, it's always better to write the definition as opposed to using the wrong word in the wrong place. So get in the habit of explaining what you mean as opposed to worrying about what it actually is. Response bias is a result of individuals giving an incorrect response. Otherwise known as lying. For instance, when Obama was running for president the first time, there was a large number of people that said that they would vote for a president who was going to be African American just because they knew it was the right thing to do, but there was no way that they were ever going to vote that way. So they would tell people that they were, and then their action would not follow what their words were. Wording a question is just exactly like it says. So basically it's a confusing or leading question, so you're leading them to one way or another. Questions that may influence an individual's answers. Just watch Fox News if you want an example of this. All right, so let's look at an example. It's common in telephone surveys to use random digit dialing equipment that selects the last 4 digits of a telephone number at random after being given the exchange, the first 3 digits. Explain how this sampling method results in undercoverage that would result or could lead to bias. So basically, you left out all the people that don't have a phone. So people that do not have a phone would be left out. So ideally you kind of think about who you would underrepresent or overrepresent. In this case we would underrepresent perhaps the people who cannot afford a phone. So you might be biased in one way or another because you left out maybe, depending upon what you were surveying, but you left out people who don't have a large income, people that struggle month to month. All right, example 2 is which of the following are sources of sampling error and which are sources of non-sampling error? And we're going to explain our answers. So the subject lies about past drug use. So this is an example of non-sampling error. Your sample wasn't bad, it's just that the person didn't exactly tell the truth. So this is a non-sampling error. This is response bias, because you didn't have, the sampling error. However, when you asked people the question, they told you false statements. They told you what perhaps you wanted to hear, or perhaps they were embarrassed or uncomfortable telling you about their past drug use. All right, which of the following are sources of sampling error and which are sources of non-sampling error? A typing error is made. So this is a non-sampling error. The sample itself is not biased, however, you recorded the data wrong. This is also called a procedural error, or procedural bias. So also a second one here is data are gathered by asking people to mail in a coupon printed in a newspaper. So you've asked them to mail it in, which means that people that don't care won't mail it in, so you didn't get any of their responses. So this is voluntary response bias, which is a sampling error. Typically when this happens, you only get like one side of the data, or one side of the answer. So people who do this want to make sure that they get the coupon or whatever it is. People that don't care, they're just going to flip the page. All right, example 3 is a common form of non-response in telephone surveys is a ring no answer. That is a call that's made to an active number but no one answers. The Italian National Statistic Institute looked at non-response to a government survey of households in Italy during the period January 1st to Easter and July 1st to August 31st. All calls were made between 7 and 10, but 21.4% gave ring no answer in one period versus 41.5% ring no answer in another period. Which period do you think had the higher rate of no answers? So make sure whenever you have something like this that has three different questions, make sure that you answer each question. So we'll start with the first one. Which period do you think had the higher rate of non-answers? So if we look at these two things, right, one thing we know that happens during this period is vacations. So more likely the July 1st
Your turn.
to August 31st. Apparently I have to watch the dog now. To August 31st had a higher rate of no answers. Okay, and then why people are more likely to not be home as they may be on vacation. All right, so you're just kind of making up a common sense answer, one that would be applicable to this problem. Explain why a high rate of non-response makes sample results less reliable. So if you have a high rate of non-response, some people that didn't get to have their answer recorded, then you can't assume that their answer would be the same as the people that answered. That makes sense. So basically, the results would be less biased, or sorry, less reliable, since you cannot assume the no answers, we'll call them, would respond the same as those Who answered? All right. All right, example 4. Study in El Paso, Texas looked at seatbelt use by drivers. Drivers were observed at randomly chosen convenience stores. After they left their cars, they were invited to answer questions that included questions about seatbelt use. In all, 75% said they always use seatbelts, yet only 61.5% were wearing seatbelts when they pulled into the store parking lots. Explain the reason for the bias observed in responses to the survey. Do you expect bias in the same direction in most surveys about seatbelt use? So again, make sure that you answer both questions. So explain the reason for bias. So the reason for bias is people know they should wear their seatbelt. So they lie about doing so. And that is response bias. They tell you what you want to hear as opposed to what actually happened. So they know they should wear their seatbelt, therefore they're going to tell you that they wore their seatbelt, even though when you counted them, they did not wear their seatbelt. So kind of the same thing you do if you're in Miss Simmons' class and you guys do the seatbelt check. If you polled the students first versus counting the students, you would find that the polled number is significantly higher than the observed number. So do you expect the bias in the same direction? Yes. Right? Because people are going to continue to lie about wearing their seatbelts, and then people are still going to have wear their seatbelts less than what they say. So yes, people will continue to lie about wearing their seatbelts. When asked versus actually wearing their seatbelts. All right, example 5. Comment on each of the following as a potential sample survey question. Is the question clear, and is it slanted toward a desired response? So which of the following best represents your opinion on gun control? The government should confiscate our guns, and we have the right to keep and bear arms. So is the question clear? Yes. So it's definitely clear. Is it slanted? So you can see right here, I mean, the government should confiscate our guns, as opposed to what is your opinion on gun control? And then we have the right to bear arms. So there's not really any middle ground here, like, you know, whatever would be in between these two things. So either the government takes them all away or we keep all of them. So there's no middle ground in between here. So it's swayed, but it's actually swayed toward or slanted towards both the extremes. So it's slanted toward both extremes. I don't know what that dog's doing. Slanted towards both extremes. There is no middle ground. Right? And hopefully you can see what I'm talking about. And the second one, a freeze in nuclear weapons should be favored because it would begin a much needed process to stop everyone in the world from building nuclear weapons now and reduce the possibility of war in the future. Do you agree or disagree? So clearly you can see that that's slanted. And then is the question clear? So it's not very concise, right? It's kind of long-winded. So it's a little bit muddled in there. So is it clear? It's not very clear. I mean, you can tell what they're asking, but they ask it in a very non-concise way. So I'm going to put not very concise. And then, is it slanted? Yes. It's slanted toward a freeze in nuclear weapons. Right? You really shouldn't ask a question with the answer inside of it. right? You want to kind of get people's opinions as opposed to giving it to them. All right, and your favorite slide of the night. You are done. Yay.